Glad you're here today. We are not doing a particular serial killer today or a particular psychopath. We're going to be talking about what you can do not to become a victim of a serial killer. Oh, whoo. I'm sorry, I have to wait for a few seconds. This is the first time I've done my show where the weather has gotten hot in Washington, D.C., and it's like, I think it's like over 80, 85 degrees right now, and I've got the lights on me. And apparently I turned down the AC, but it's not really doing the job. So if I do this a whole bunch of times, it's because I'm sweltering in here. Wow, it's hot. Anyway, okay, so we're here, and the reason I decided to do this show today was because if you've been watching the news lately, you probably saw this girl. You remember seeing this girl on the news? She was a young woman. Well, she's a girl. I can't remember exactly the age she is, but she is a girl who was sitting in the middle of this green area waiting. I'm not sure if she was waiting on a bus or somebody to pick her up, or she was just on her way home. I looked at this case a while last week when it came out, but I just grabbed this picture because I thought it was so interesting. So anyway, this guy pulls up in a vehicle, and you can see the video of this. This guy pulls up in a vehicle on the side of the street, and he gets out, and she's just like sitting there, and he comes and he goes and he tries to grab her and haul her across this green patch to the street where his car is and shove her into it. And she fought back. And she said, she'd watched some TV crime shows that had taught her the best thing to do was fight back. And she did. And in the struggle, he finally just gave up and left her there. I do want to point out, just to be realistic here, this was an area where cars go up and down quite often. They pass by. So this man only had a small amount of time to grab her and pull her into a vehicle. So it's fortunate that she was in a very public location. But she did the right thing. She fought back, and very impressive. She did the right thing, and she's alive here because of that. If she had not fought back, he might have been able to get her into the vehicle before anybody else came by, and that would be the last we'd ever heard of her. But she fought long enough where he gave up, and other people could drive by and see what was going on. So bravo to her. I'm just real impressed by that. But that led me to thinking, I want to review for people what is the methodology of not becoming a victim of a serial killer, because there's a lot of information out there that just is incorrect and actually frighteningly bad, so that it doesn't really help people stop being a victim of a serial killer. So here we go. I'm going to start with things like what is the big problem here when it comes to serial killers? And I will tell you what the biggest problem is. This is it. And I actually wrote this in my book. I'm going to pick up the book here. This book, get out of the light here. Killing for Sport. This is actually the first book I ever wrote, and it was about serial killers, and the point was to be getting rid of the myths of serial killers, and to understand how they actually think, as opposed to how Hollywood wants you to think they think. And so if you watch a lot of the Hollywood shows, you're going to think there's no way to avoid becoming a victim of a serial killer because they're so brilliant, they're so clever, they scheme for such a long time that they've laid out the great plans. No, they haven't. That's just really not true. Essentially, what it comes down to is this saying here: there are no victims, only volunteers. Now, what does that mean? What it means to a serial killer is, hey, if you hadn't put yourself in a situation where I could take advantage of you, you wouldn't be a victim. You volunteered. Now, having said that, boy, do you get attacked if you say such a thing. Because I then wrote this book later on called, do it right, How to Save Your Daughter's Life. And I have a daughter, I have two sons as well, but I wanted parents to understand what it was that got their girls in trouble, what got them into all kinds of problems. I write in this book about many things. I write about stalkers, I write about boyfriends, I write about mothers' boyfriends who they bring into the home. I write about the internet and the dangers out there. And in this book also, I write about serial killers because sometimes that can be a possibility. So what happened when I wrote this was I got attacked by this. Don't blame the victim. Okay. Oh my God. I got so many of these angry people. Don't blame the victim. Mostly females, interestingly enough, who think that by giving safety information, somehow you're blaming the person who you're trying to save. Makes no sense to me at all. I'm giving information in order for a person not to become a victim, not because I think that it's their fault that they became a victim, but it's just that in reality, there are things that we can do that can bring more danger to us than other things. I wish we lived in a perfect world. I absolutely do. I went to a meeting once for a particular religion. I won't mention which one, but they have a concept of paradise. And it was a lovely idea, I must admit. And the idea of paradise was that someday you could live on an earth where no one would harm you. And I thought about that. I thought, how wonderful. Wouldn't it be an amazing thing to be able to just walk down a path in the middle of the night in the woods, listening to the owls and seeing the nightlife and not have to worry about somebody harming you, to be able to go running wherever you wanted, hike through I wanted to do the Appalachian Trail. I did at one point. I regained my intelligence about that, realizing I wouldn't have gotten very far. But I had this dream that I would start at the top of the Appalachian Trail in Maine and go all the way down to Georgia. But then I thought to myself, that isn't very safe, because as a lone female on a lonely trail, I have no way to protect myself particularly, and no one is there to see anything happen. So I realized it was fairly unsafe. Now, there are women who will go and do this. They will, and they will survive. It's a risk factor. It doesn't mean you're going to be killed. It's just a risk factor. And I'll talk about that issue about risk later. But I thought, what a great thing that would be. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to go any place in the world and never have to worry about anybody wanting to harm you? Wouldn't it be great if the animals were like that too, where I could go out on the African savannah and pat lions? Wonderful idea. This is not the world we live in. And so in my book, I wrote this beginning. And so I want to read it to you because I think this is very, very true. And we have to understand this as human beings, that we live in an earth, on an earth, which is not safe all the time. So this is what I wrote about on here. I said this. A lot of people would write and they'd say, oh, you should talk about the men who do this. You should tell them to stop. I'm like, okay, that's nice. And you should talk more about the perpetrators and how bad they are and that they're wrong. They should treat women better. Again, nice idea. And does that mean I don't believe we should do our best to have a good society, that we should have babies being brought into the world to people who really want them, so they aren't abandoned or neglected or abused? Absolutely. Do I want children to go to school where they're not bullied? You bet I do. So all of these things are wonderful. We want to improve our society and our family life and everything we can so we have healthy human beings growing up. We don't want our own children to grow up to be psychopaths, and I don't want anybody else's children to grow up to be psychopaths. But we're not there yet, and those people are in our society. So I wrote this. To put it bluntly, talking about the perpetrator may be fascinating and educational, and we can rail about changing the system, locking these monsters up and preventing them from being created in the first place. But this isn't going to do much to save your daughter's life today. And as a matter of fact, this was written for girls. I was going to write one for boys. To save your daughter's life, or to save your son's life, or to save your own life. The rules are the same. It's like this. Suppose a young girl, or you or your son, goes out on the African plain alone to walk in nature, and she gets eaten by a lion. Should I speak about how bad the lion is? How he shouldn't have eaten the girl? Should I go to talk to that lion and the other lions and tell them not to eat people? Are those lions going to pay me any mind? Murderous psychopaths, like lions, don't care what I have to say. I can't stop them or teach them to do right. I can't stop a lion. And I mean that by saying, without shooting them or putting them in prison. I can't stop an inhumane being unless I can lock them up all right now, and all of them, because you can lock up one, doesn't mean there's not another one out there. And that is even if I knew which ones were lions and which ones were about to become lions. We don't always identify violent psychopaths before we find out the violent psychopaths. So some girl somewhere is at risk. That girl might be your daughter. I can't make quick changes to get rid of all the psychopaths and predators out there, but I can educate mothers and fathers on lion behavior and lion territory and help them help their daughters avoid these beasts and defend themselves if they must. So that's what I wrote in this book. And this is what I say to you today, regardless of who you are. And you can be female, you can be male, you can be a boy, a girl, whatever age you are. You can be at risk depending on the circumstances, depending on where you are, what you do. And I can't stop all the psychopaths in the world from existing, all the violent psychopaths, but I can help you make better choices to avoid them. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. I want to live in that paradise world. I want to live someplace where I can just wander around and everybody's nice to me. I mean, I love that. I'd like to be able to go out and have a drink and maybe get tipsy and walk to my car and not have to worry about getting assaulted in the parking lot. And of course I wouldn't drive tipsy, but so, I would love that kind of safety factor. It isn't exactly the way the world is. So I'm not blaming the victim. All I want is us not to be a victim. And that means we have to understand how it all works, how serial killers work, serial predators in general. And as I said before, they want to volunteer. So how do we avoid being volunteers? Now, there's a lot of stuff out there in the world that is, quite frankly, pretty nonsensical. For example, anybody remember when Ted Bundy was rolling around and Son of Sam? So remember the long hair thing? Oh my God, they're going after women with long hair. No, neither one of them was going after women with long brown hair. They were just going after the women that were in their neck of the woods. Now, Ted Bundy was hitting up college campuses at a time when pretty much all the girls, if they were white, had this long brown hair and a part down the middle, which I had myself. If I dug up my old pictures from when I was 20 years old, I looked just like this. And in New York, where Son of Sam was running around, he was picking the girls. Wasn't that he was picking the long-haired girls because they had long hair particularly, but just that when he was looking at cars, he was trying to shoot the girl. And some of them, if they had short hair, he couldn't tell if they were male or female. So he was going for the long-haired ones, thinking my chances of them being female are greater. And that many of them had dark hair, simply the fact that he lived in an area where a lot of dark-haired women lived. I mean, that's a cultural factor. So you're not going to do any good to change your hairstyle to save yourself. That is absolutely not going to work. This is a good point. I just want to point this out. Lisa says, like animals, serial killers go after who they view the weakest in the pack. Absolutely, Lisa. They go for what is doable for them. For example, we've often heard about elderly women who are at home in their houses, living alone, and I'll get to the issue about living alone later, living alone in their houses. And usually when they get attacked by a serial killer, it's often a budding one. It's often a teenager just down the block. And he, doesn't have a car, so he can't get anywhere. And he also maybe has watched that elderly woman next door or 4 doors down and says, I can take her. Maybe he's not the biggest guy on the block, but I can take her. Now, so he will go after that which he considers weak. Now, interestingly enough, which is kind of just a strange thing, I just have to put this in as a side note, it's amazing how many elderly women have actually beaten up their attackers, and I'm talking about women in their 80s, 90s. And it seems what happens is the guy would come into their bedroom and she see him there. And you know how some elderly people have gotten ornery. They're just not putting up with that kind of stuff. So they just pick up their cane and start whacking the guy, or they pick up their walker and hit him. It's amazing that some of them actually saved their lives. And you would think they wouldn't be able to do this, but some of them actually have been a surprise to their attackers, who later said, I didn't think she was going to do that. So weakness, absolutely. Very, very important now for it to be a weakness. And this is true and not true, Mary Rose. You might not be weak, just alone at the time. This is true. However, let me show you a couple pictures of a couple ladies here. Okay, I got in trouble for doing this one too, by the way. Okay, why did I get in trouble? Because I said, this is what I said. I said, this lady over here will not be the victim of a serial killer. This lady over here will be. And when I said that, people got really mad at me and considered me, I was insulting to people who were obese. And I'm like, no, it's a reality. And it's because the very, very heavy woman, well, first of all, it may be also true that she's not jogging at dusk or dawn because she doesn't jog. Usually when she goes for a walk, she goes with a friend. But even if she were completely alone, and that is absolutely correct, Annie, it's too hard. This is true. First of all, yes, he might be able to get her on the ground, but then he has to do something like get her pants off, which people go, oh, don't say something like that. Okay, I'm going to say something like that. It's not easy to get certain pants off of very big people. It's a lot of work. It just is. So the serial killer goes, oh yeah, I'm not doing that. That's too much. That's too much like work. And also, can you drag her to your car? Probably not. Can you fit her? If you're driving a little small car, can you lift her up and shove her in her trunk? No, you can't. In other words, she's hard to deal with. She's hard to maneuver. It's a fact. So one of the safest things you can be is really overweight. I mean, it's absolutely really true. Really overweight. Yeah, exactly. Harder to drag in the back of a van. It's the absolute truth. And I've had some cases where I was asked who, this was on the news channels, they'd have a very heavy set girl and they'd say, who do you think did this? Do you think it was a serial killer? And I was like, no, this was somebody she knew. And it would turn out to be a boyfriend or some other guy she knew that killed her because she's not going to usually be the target of a serial killer. And there's a second thing about serial killers. Serial killers like trophy women if they can get them. And by trophy women, I mean in certain areas what they would like to do to feel powerful, to feel like God, to feel like they finally won something, is if they can get a small, pretty cheerleader type, they would much prefer that because that makes them feel really good. So they like pretty girls. They do. They like pretty slim girls just to make themselves feel like I beat society. Society, had this girl. She was everything. As a matter of fact, that's the kind of girl they brag about. That's the kind of girl that brags about herself. She's in all the clubs. She's popular at school. I wasn't popular at school, but I can rape and kill her. So who's going to win then? So that's the way a serial killer thinks. So he may pick her because she's a trophy. And the other main reason he'll pick her is because she's small. And what a serial killer likes the most is a 5'4", 115 pound, 110 pound girl. Really easy to manage because she's small. She's small. And I have pointed this out, I don't know, umpteen times that here, I'll show you what the problem is. Well, that's an interesting one. I hear attackers steer clear of people with umbrellas. I guess I'm not so sure. It depends where the umbrella is, I suppose, and depends who's carrying the umbrella. And I would not say that's a big thing, but yeah, at least it's a sort of a weapony thing you could whack somebody with, I suppose. Ms. Lee, I'm a big girl. It doesn't insult me. You're right. It's a fact. So, hey, you're safe. Sometimes things are good, What was this? My mom always told me in the 80s, Walkman days, never to walking home because I won't hear a killer coming. Always stuck with me. Yes and no. Okay. I'm going to get to that yes and no issue. And I'll start right here with that. Okay. Let me bring up this screen for you. Okay. This is something we see all the time and it makes me absolutely furious. Absolutely furious. Now, what we have here is a self-defense class. And what'll happen is when there's a serial killer in an area, all of a sudden the college in the area will just start doing all these self-defense classes. And there are specific self-defense programs which are then pushed to the population. And come in and get our self-defense program. It's going to be either a 1-night program or it'll be a 3-night program. But we'll teach you how to defend yourself. Yes, we will. Okay, now, I have spoken up against these self-defense programs forever because they are What they tell you they're going to do, which is the wrong thing you want to do, is they're going to empower you. Empower you to do what? Walk down dark roads by yourself, but cross dark parking lots after you've been drinking. Let's see, go jogging where there's nobody around. What is it empowering you to do? Go home with strange guys you don't know who they are? Jump into people's cars, hitchhiking? I mean, what is it empowering you to do? Because take a look at these girls in the class. Oh, thank you. Mary Rose, there we go. Mary Rose, unless you train for years, your size difference is still a disadvantage. Absolutely, 100%. Most women are, if you take a look at boxing, and you take a look at heavyweights, and you take a look at lightweights, featherweights, most women are featherweights. They're not big and they're not that strong. So if you just look at the boxing world, for example, take a look at Mike Tyson, and then take a look at a Korean flyweight. They're small guys. Now, are they good fighters? Absolutely, if they're fighting other flyweights. Now, I have a brother-in-law who was world champion, I think 3 times in welterweight and middleweight, light middleweight. I forgot it now. He's been world champion 3 times as a boxer. His name is Simon Brown, in case you want to look him up. Fabulous boxer. He didn't fight in the heavyweight division. You know why? Because he'd get decimated. I mean, and yet he's a world champion boxer. He would be decimated. And that Korean flyweight, you put that Korean flyweight in the ring with the Mike Tyson type, he's going to last maybe, if he runs, he'll last one round. If he doesn't, he can throw punches at the heavyweight, and the heavyweight's going to come back after you go bop, bop, he's going to go bam, and the flyweight, featherweight is going to be down on the ground and out. And that's the problem with all these ladies here. They are all flyweights, featherweights, whatever they are, little lightweights. They're not big girls. And if you look at their arm strength, I'm sorry, I don't see muscular girls in there. Huge, massive, muscular girls. I see regular girls. And so what they do in this little classes they give is the first they teach them how to punch, which, again, first of all, learning how to punch is not an easy thing. And anybody who's taken boxing or martial arts knows that there's ways to hold your I know I've done both martial arts and boxing. So there's ways to hold your fists, and there's ways to punch. And so if you're punching into a heavy bag, bam, you got to hit in the right way, or otherwise you're going to break your wrist. These girls do this. And so if that comes in like this, all you do is break your wrist. Now, let's assume you even get one in properly after your one-day class. You better hit that dude so incredibly perfectly, like right in the nose or something, so that you could make him some water in his eyes so you can run like hell. Most of the time what happens is, lucky if you can even get a punch near the dude. I mean, let's assume he's coming straight on at you and says, "I'm going to rape and murder you today." "Oh, thank you for telling me. Now let me punch you." Okay, so now you throw your punch. You have got to be, first of all, if you don't know how to step in and do your punch, you're going to be throwing the punch so far away, you're barely going to contact. You're going to do this. And he's going to go, "What the hell is that?" Bam, and you're going to be down. Or if you get in and you throw your punch, and all you have to do is block one punch, guess who the next punch is coming at? You. Boom, he's going to come back over. And he's going to hit you, and you're going to be down. You cannot take a punch from a big dude, especially a psychopathic, angry, aggressive dude. He probably can throw a really good punch at your little face, and he'll smash it in. So consequently, if you can't fight that guy, actually tell yourself, if I got out of the ring, could I fight him? You shouldn't be there. Now, one of the things I told my 2 sons, I remember telling them that when I think they were about 10, or maybe someone 9 or 10, they said, "Mom, can we go to the park by ourselves?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because there are sometimes big guys that come out to that park that want to hurt you or beat you up, and you can't fight them." "Yes, we can." I said, "Let me ask you this question, boys. Can you beat me?" And then they went, "No." I went, "Okay, well, when you can beat me up, come back and talk to me." Because I could have beaten them up, and that's a fact. So you have to look at your own abilities. So these women were getting stupid stuff, little punchy things that weren't going to work. And then they learn how to kick. Oh my God, kicking is extremely difficult because it throws you off balance. So, and half the time when these girls are, it might be in high heels, which, by the way, is a target for serial killers because they're like, whoa, she's in high heels, and she can't even keep her balance, So, and again, he has to be facing you when you throw this brilliant kick. What, you're going to throw a roundhouse to his head like this? I don't think so. You're going to try to kick him. You might hit him in the knee, in which case he's really going to be pissed. And of course, everybody says, go for the groin, Well, okay, if you're perfect aim and you get super, 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 super lucky, yes. But, being lucky 1 out of 100 times means you're dead at 99 out of 100 times. So the problem with these courses, I'll have to show you one other thing they taught me. I thought, well, this is another funny one. They showed you when the guy grabbed you, how to twist out. You twist against where the weak part is here. So you twist out. So I went home after I did these courses just to find out what they were teaching. I went home and I said to my husband, who at the time was working as a mechanic. So he did a lot of stuff with his hands. He was real strong hands. I said, here, grab my wrist. And he grabbed it. And the next thing I knew, I was trying to get out of it. I was just lying on the floor going, let go of my hand, it hurts. So it doesn't work. So what'll happen is occasionally somebody will have a lucky moment. And then, of course, they'll get in front of a camera and say that. Or the guy will attack them who's not really attacking them, shall we say. Maybe not a real big guy. And you get lucky and you can whomp him and he runs away. But, to give you empowerment to be stupid is not a good idea. Now, if women want to go to boxing, martial arts, study this stuff, then yes, they will be in better shape. I will admit that. But it still doesn't mean you can beat Mike Tyson. It still has to be somebody you can beat. And I had an interesting experience once when I was in West Africa and Nigeria, and I was walking down a hall, and a English sailor followed me down the hall to my room. And I opened up my door, and this is one thing I warn women about. You got to watch out who's behind you, because as I went in my room, he just came in behind me, and he shut the door. And he said, now you're going to do what I want you to. I was 19 years old at the time, but I had taken martial arts. I had been studying martial arts. And I don't know how I got the nerve. Maybe it's because he was as I point out, size makes a difference. He was kind of a small sailor. He really was kind of a small, wimpy kind of sailor. And I think he just thought he was going to come in and tell me that. I was going to be terrified. He was going to push me onto bed. He was going to rape me. And I dropped into a fighting position, and I started cussing at him, told me if he was going to get near me, I'm not going to use the swear words because I'm going to do this to him, do that to him. And he looked at me, and then he just left. And I remember going, that worked. I was rather stunned that worked, but he was not that much. He was a wimpy attempted rapist, So I got lucky. If the dude had been bigger, he would have just killed me. I would have been raped, and that would have been that. So I do not, just because I got lucky doesn't mean I'm going to use that and tell me, oh, see, I took martial arts and I could save myself from rapists and serial killers. No, I should have paid attention to who the heck was behind me, so he wouldn't come in the room behind me and put myself in this really bad position. That would have been a much better idea than feeling empowered. So the problem is for females and men, depending on how big you are, a lot of men think they're not going to be victims, and they can be victims, especially if they're not huge guys. There are crimes that are committed against men by usually other men, and they can be also a victim of a serial killer. So you have to look at your own self and say to yourself, what am I capable of? And what is not realistic that I'm not capable of? So for most women, the problem is, and for children, if they've taken their little self-defense class when they're 10 or 12 or whatever, you do not, that's an interesting concept. I'm sorry. I gotta look at this. I know who this is. Hi, Lizzie. Wear a corset worked for me. Well, that's an interesting concept. It depends under what circumstances, but you got a point there. It's making things more difficult to remove stuff and get on with the program, depending on how much time the guy has. Because if he's got extra time in a particular place, he can use a knife, and he'll remove that corset with the knife, and not in a very nice way. So yes and no. So there are things that you can do. I want to point this out as far as mace. Actually, not And really my favorite, I'm going to go with at least a little bit closer. Your voice is your best weapon. And I want to point this out because what happens is, let's say you're out in a public place. And when I say public place, let's say some place where people might be nearby. Now, yes, you could scream. Help doesn't usually work because nobody knows what that means. Don't ever yell fire. That's a stupid thing because I don't know where they came up with that nonsense. But what's best to yell is something to the effect of, I'm being attacked, call the police, or help, he has a gun. Something where they know something really horrible is happening. Help, he's got a knife, he's going to kill me. That might help. Because, you don't want to sound like, because a lot of people don't want to get involved, especially if they think you're out there with your boyfriend. Oh, help. And sometimes people's voices don't really sound all that scared. They just sound like they're being silly. Maybe some teenager yelling some stuff. So you got to yell something. If you have time, and this is what's important, you have to have time to yell something. And how do you get that time? And so here's another thing to be realistic about. Okay. Oh, there you go, Martin. I think I can handle myself. I played a lot of Street Fighter 2 Turbo and on Super Nintendo. There you go. Oddly, some people actually do think through osmosis through the screen. I've watched all those Bruce Lee movies. I can fight. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but yeah. So probably not going to save you, Martin. But okay, let's say you're out so let's take a look at the first place where we have to be careful of. Isolation, and where this happens is places like this. Jogging is one of the number one places you find dead women who've been raped and murdered are in the bushes. And so what happens is she goes jogging, oftentimes at dawn and dusk, because that's before work or after work. And it starts getting dark, or it starts just getting light. And it's a really weird time of day when there's not a lot of people and it's kind of hard to see. And this is when these guys like to hide in the bushes. So the problem you have is, and this is another myth that we have to dispel. Usually the serial killer doesn't exactly care what you're like, what you look like, where you're from, what color you are, what race you are, what hair color. None of that stuff really matters to him. What really matters to him is nobody's going to see him do it. He has that opportunity. And so the problem is when he jumps out, the chances of him jumping in front of you are not as good as him just jumping out and hitting you over the back of the head. And once he's hit you over the back of the head, guess what? You can't scream. You can't use your pepper spray. You can't do anything because he's already knocked you over the back of the head. And another way that this happens is the guy is coming towards you like this, but he's talking on, and he seems pleasant enough. He doesn't step in front of you. He waits till he gets by and then he turns around and then he attacks you. So and so he's past you, and you think he's not dangerous because he's already past you, and then he can get you. I tend to, when people walk by me and I'm alone on a trail, I tend to do the number they do in certain places in the world where you kind of do this and you kind of look back at them and go, yeah, I see you. Because at least they know you see them and they think, okay, I'm not going to bother with her. But the problem with walking or jogging at dawn or dusk is that there's very few people, and the problem is the guy is looking for an opportunity, and he may be there every day and not done anything because there were just, as he saw a girl coming along, then he saw another person in the distance and he let that one go. And he saw another one another day, but there was two people coming along and he let that go. One day, when he looks up that path and sees no one coming, he looks down that path and sees no one coming, and there's the girl, that's his opportunity. He only needs 5 minutes. And usually you don't have a chance to pull out your pepper spray or to scream. He already nails you over the head or jumps on top of you, and it's just all over. And of course, the farther you away from civilization, the less he has to even worry about these things, because even if you scream, he can smash your face in a second. One of the things I do recommend is the Siren thing. I like the Siren thing, and I would love to actually. That's the one thing I would be a spokesperson for, is the Siren. The problem with mace is it can work, but you got to make sure you're not macing yourself. You have to have it in your hand. The Siren is kind of cool because it makes such a horrible, horrible, annoying sound that it won't hurt you. It will alert people to where something's going down, because they'll hear the sound and may go toward it to see what's going on. And the serial killer, it's really hard to continue with your crime when your ears are splitting. And so I really like the Siren, the really terrible, you pull the thing and then you throw it in a bush or something nearby, and it makes a horrible sound. And then you can run like hell. Yeah, oh yes, this is true. Lisa, poor dog walkers always find the bodies. And this is true because they're, yeah, that's how an awful lot of them are found. Oh, Yorkshire Ripper, Veronica says, bashes victims on their heads. I don't remember how each one of the serial killers got their victim, but I'm going to talk about some of the different ways in general. So let's talk. So the self-defense thing to me is rather unreasonable. So here's one I just want to point out. Serial killers like the dark. They really love the dark. So that's one of the times when it is most dangerous. For example, how about you're leaving the club or you're leaving a building and you have a long way to walk across the parking lot to your car, and the lighting is not real good and there's really nobody out there. It's dark. And so you are taking a risk crossing that parking lot. And that's something you want to be careful when you park places as to how far you have to walk back to get to your car. And be very careful about asking security to walk you, because the number one job of serial killers is security work. And that is not, I'm not making that up. That's true. Security work is the number one job of serial killers for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is a lot of serial killers wanted to be police. They love the power and control they think they're going to get if they could become a police officer and get to wear a uniform and have a gun. But then they go and they apply to the police and they fail because of the psych test. And so they're like, darn it, I couldn't be a police officer. So the next thing they try to do is become armed security. And sometimes they'll get past that and they'll become an armed security guard. And if they can't get that, they might become mall security or a bouncer at a club. So another possibility. Now, before I get all the people that are going to get angry with me saying, well, my son is in security. Okay, I've had two sons in security. One was a security guard, federal security guard, and the other one was a bouncer. So I've had those. Both of my sons have done that work. Neither one of them is a serial killer. I can guarantee you that. They've never broken the law. They're lovely guys. But they will tell you, yeah, I think that other guy was a serial killer. And they'll tell you there's psychopaths working with them. They will tell you that because it's so easy to get the job. Especially when you get down to mall security or certain building security, they need security guards so many places that all you have to do is be able to breathe in and out, and you got the job. So don't ask somebody, you don't know who they are, even if they have a security uniform on, please walk me to my car, because he may be the one you shouldn't be getting anywhere near. So be very careful of that. Now, let's take a look at this. This is one of my favorite things. I call this you remember the fire issue where you had the triangle, the fire one, and you would have to have, let's see, what do you have to have? You have to have an accelerant, and you have to have, I forgot how to build a fire. you have to have oxygen. I know that. You have to have something to light the thing, whether you got to have something that'll burn, right? So you have to have these three things to be able to have a fire. And this same kind of concept is true for becoming a victim of any kind of criminal. You have to have, the most important thing you have to have is this one over here, this one up there, assailant. Okay, you could jog down that bike trail day after day after day, and nothing ever happens to you. You know why nothing happens to you? Because there was never a serial killer or a serial rapist on that trail. And if there's nobody to attack you, there is going to be no crime. So you can feel really safe about, oh, that's perfectly safe. I've gone down that trail. I don't know how many times. There's never been anybody, I've never gotten attacked. Okay, so let's say for an entire year, you've been on that trail thing, running around. And then Mr. Serial Killer, who was living in the next town over, gets tossed out of his house because he didn't pay his rent. And he goes and lives with his cousin, who happens to live right at the end of that trail. And now you go running down that trail, and guess who is there? It is Mr. Assailant. He is now there. So now there is an assailant. There is going to be a victim, that's you. And then there's a thing called opportunity. Now, opportunity comes when you usually have been isolated. And therefore, he can go ahead and do it. There are no spectators. There's going to be no witnesses. So when you walk to your car and you ask Mr. Security Guard, who happens to be a serial killer also, to walk you to your car, there's the assailant, you're the victim, and now he's in an empty parking lot with you. Bye-bye. That might happen. Same thing is very true with, let's take a look at hitchhiking. Okay, so girl goes out and she hitchhikes. Nice person picks her up and says, where are you going? Because he's worried about her being out by herself. And she goes, oh, I have to go to such and such a place. He goes, I'll give you a ride. She jumps in. He drives her there. He lets her out. How did she survive? There was a victim available and there was opportunity, but there was no assailant. So if she could take ride after ride after ride, but one day when she gets in a car, this time there is an assailant in that car, she's never seen again. And this is, so, you have to make sure that for you, two things don't exist: the assailant and the opportunity. You can always be a victim. So you don't want to put yourself with an assailant and there's an opportunity. That's what does you in. So there are ways that people get themselves in positions to become a victim. And we're going to talk about the out of the house, and I'll talk about the inside the house. Outside of the house, we're talking about joggers, people walking in isolated locations, women coming home late at night. And when I say women, yeah, okay, sometimes I mean there could be men coming home late at night who are smaller people. But it tends to be this females are usually the ones that are the victims of this kind of thing. So you're coming home late, getting off a bus at late at night, and you're walking down to your apartment, and it's 2:00 in the morning. And if the guy's watching that area, he's like, hey, I saw this woman get off the bus. And again, he might watch you a number of times, but he didn't have an opportunity because other people got off the bus too, or there was somebody on the street. But maybe the 7th time he watches you get off the bus and the bus leaves, there's nobody there. And he grabs you, he drives up and he grabs you and pulls you in the car, and then you're gone. Or he pulls you behind the building and kills you there. So being out in public, the most important thing is witnesses, witnesses, witnesses. As long as you've got witnesses, almost never will this happen. Now, could it happen? In theory, but generally speaking, when you're talking about stranger to stranger, normally they'll find a place with no witnesses. So as long as you're around people, you got witnesses. And that's one of the rules, by the way, when I travel in other countries, I've always said to people, how do you stay safe? And one of my rules is I stay with where there are women and children. Women and children. Because if I'm going to a shopping area, if there's women and children, I'm safe. If I go into a restaurant with women and children, I'm safe. If I go into a train or a bus and there's women and children, I'll be okay. But if you end up the lone woman on a train with 5 guys in certain countries, you might get raped or possibly murdered. If you go into some club and there's no women in there, you're in the wrong place. So you make sure there's women and children there, and therefore that is a place where families go, and you can you can be much safer. I want to bring out what this comment. In my opinion, the big deterrent is not appearing vulnerable in mannerisms, etc. There is a truth to that, and again, I'll put a little bit of a thing on it. Girls who look scared and wimpy, walking the street, yes, you're going to be there's more likelihood that you will be attacked because you look wimpy. This is true. Amazonian women, let me tell you, strong Amazonian women, people don't like messing with them. It's not a bad thing. I don't mean obese. I mean big, strong women. It's just, again, it's not worth it. Maybe she's just going to be trouble. Feisty women, feisty whatever, will fight back. These guys don't want to fight. They don't want to fight for a couple of reasons. One is sometimes you lose. Secondly, sometimes people see you fighting and then you can be identified. Thirdly, when there's fighting, there can be things like scratches and bite marks, and you can, there's DNA running around, and you don't want that to be linked back to you. So generally speaking, they prefer somebody who's a little bit wimpier than one who shows a lot of moxie, and tough street girls usually don't have this kind of a problem as much. Now, having said that, again, if you get hit over the back of the head, it doesn't matter how fancy you are with your toughness, they're going to get you anyway. So again, you have to keep safe on that. That's an interesting point about Uber. Uber scares me, even though they track the GPS on cars. I only took an Uber once, but in the morning, my family knew I was. Now, I do Uber a lot, I must admit. Yes, they are tracked. Can you still be something happen to you? This is a possibility, and it has. Sometimes also they know where you live when they drop you off, and that can be an issue. But cab drivers are worse, because cab drivers, they can just grab you anywhere and there's no tracking. So I find Uber safer than cabs, and I find a lot of the Uber ones seem like they're more like some young people who are trying to make pay for college and other things like that. Some of the taxi drivers, I don't know. I mean, again, most of them are nice guys, but and that's just unfortunately. That's always an issue, and there's a level where we do take a risks in our lives, and that's it. You can only do the best to reduce our risk factors. Absolutely, nothing's perfect. As I would say, we don't live in that perfect world. We have to reduce our risk factors. So when we're out in public, it's just don't be isolated, especially in a dark situation, or there's just absolutely nobody around. That's where you're going to run into the biggest problems. And the next biggest problems people run into is if you are involved with some kind of behavior which is unsafe. Tinder? Doing Tinder? Don't do Tinder. I mean, Tinder, you're meeting up with someone, you do not know who they are. And they're serial killers like Tinder. They do love Tinder. And if you're involved in prostitution, that is extremely dangerous. And there's been a real problem with prostitutes being killed through Tinder and through other advertising methodologies, sometimes a whole string of them. And then another way is if you are actually a prostitute on the street, you simply by the fact that you will get in somebody's car you do not know put you at major risks. And prostitutes have always been a good choice for serial killers. And it's not because they're trying to clean society, because they hate prostitutes. It has nothing to do with any of that. Prostitutes are available. They are. And some people say, well, it's because also that people don't care enough about them, and so they don't get as investigated. That's not entirely true. The problem is a lot of times when they disappear and they're not found for a while, people think they've run off. They're doing drugs. They've run away. Or they've gone off with somebody, a boyfriend, or it could be, it could be that say they're into drugs and they disappeared for that reason, or they've got a lot of reasons they disappear, and most of the time it isn't a serial killer that does them in either. So the pimp, they might have a pimp who they're scared of and they run away from the pimp. They might get a new pimp who says, I'll take you away from that one, give you a better deal. There's all kinds of reasons that a prostitute will just disappear. And a lot of times she's not keeping in touch with her family. Sometimes her family doesn't want to keep in touch with her because she's involved in stuff they don't want to know about. So she may call them once in a while, and maybe nobody's heard from her for a month or two, the family, and they don't know anything happened to her. So prostitutes can get into really big trouble. Now, sometimes there are pimps kill them, but a lot of times it is the John that kills them. And what will happen there is that, and this is what people don't understand, is it's often a John that everybody knows, because what he does is he can come and he picks up, let's say the first night he picks up Sally, and while he's standing there, Sally's there. Oh, maybe nobody's there, but she picks up Sally. He goes off with her. He pays her. He has sex with her. He pays her. She comes back. Sally walks in, sees Honey and Candy, and they go, "Hey, how was your day?" And she goes, "Cool. He was good." And then the next week, maybe all three of them stand on the corner, and he picks Penny that time. Let's see, Candy. He'll pick Candy that time. And now the other two ladies see Candy get in the car, and they're like, "Bye, Candy." And Candy goes off with, we'll call him just John, and she comes back, and she goes, "Oh, he was real good. He was really nice, and he gave me a little extra money, so we really like him." And then the third girl gets in the car with him, and she comes back. So now everybody thinks John's a great guy. Then another night, one of the girls is out there by herself, and there are no witnesses. She gets in the car with John. They go away. John rapes and murders her. She never comes back. And then when the police come and talk to them, they say, "What about this guy? This guy here, this guy, John?" And they go, Oh no, he's really nice. He's been our client for a long time. We always come back alive, and therefore he's not a suspect. So prostitution is extremely, extremely dangerous. Another danger is runaways, because they're running away and they take help from people they shouldn't take help from. They'll get in cars they shouldn't get into, and then they just disappear and also get raped and murdered. Drugs will do people in, because once they've taken drugs, they don't know what their surroundings are anymore. Sometimes they buy drugs from people they shouldn't be hanging around. They go places, they end up alone with some creepy dude, and they can get into major trouble. So there's all of these issues that cause people to get into trouble outside of their homes. And so hitchhiking, prostitution, runaways, and then just walking and moving about in empty places is dangerous. Let's see Pat, do statistics show that in general females are targeted to being victims? Well, females are usually the victims. It's only because if you have a majority heterosexual male population, more heterosexuals, and if they want a crime of power and control, they could be David Berkowitz, son of Sam, and only shoot them, as he would point out. I wasn't going to rape you, I was just going to kill you. So I'm going to shoot you, and that gives me the thrill. That is a fairly unusual serial killer. Most of them like to add rape in, because rape is such a violation that it gives them a really cheap thrill. And if you like to have sex with women, hey, you might as well throw that in there to also have the big cheap thrill of actual rape. So yeah, so women tend to be more of a target. But if you have pedophiles who, sometimes they'll go either way, boys and girls. And then, of course, you got the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. And Jeffrey Dahmer, and this is another way you get in trouble. Basically, he brought men back to his apartment. And then once he had them alone, then he could do what he wanted with them. And he picked men that he thought, they were vulnerable people. So also your question, what age range? It's kind of depends on, it's kind of like going to a bar. If a man who's in his 30s, let's say, goes to a bar, he's going to like to pick himself up an 18-year-old if he can get it. And by the end of the night, he's okay with a 40-year-old. So it all depends what's available, and if there's a lot of young things available, then they're probably going to go for the younger things. And younger things are usually more available than older things, because younger things do silly stuff like get drunk and run around in empty places, get involved with drugs. Go off with men they don't know on Tinder. Tends to be younger people. So you will have a younger set of people. Sometimes you will have the old elderly women at home type of issue. And that's where you see older women get killed. Also, another point about homes. So I want to bring up homes. That's another place that it can be dangerous. And the problem we have in America where people get raped and murdered in homes is because they live alone. So let's say you're a dude and you're a serial killer and you're walking down the block and you see, I'm going to show you a couple of things you might see for homes. Let's say you see a home like this. Sorry, wrong one. Those are those girls still trying to save their lives. Okay, and not succeeding. Okay, here's one. So you got this house, and in this house, you've got an extended family. Whole bunch of people live there. Whole bunch of people. So problem with a house like this, you got to look at it like this. You're looking at a bunch of houses in a row. You're going to go for the one which is most enticing. Kind of like if you put 10 people in a row and said, pick one out you'd like to be with, you're going to pick the one you want to be with. So serial killers will pick the place they think they can victimize more easily. So they're going to look and they're going to go, they get to this house. They're like, there's like 5 cars in the driveway and they're never there. They're always there. It's never empty. There's always some car there. And then they see people coming and going and coming and going. And so he's sitting there watching. He's like, I can't find a time when I can sneak in and get anybody. And besides which, there's an awful lot of guys in that house. Okay, forget that one. I'm not bothering with that house. So then he looks down the way and then he sees this house. This house Okay, he's got NRA sticker on the outside. There's dog food bowls. There's clearly dogs there. He's not. This isn't one of these fakey things. Oh, there. That's a cute one. I keep a very large pair of men's boots outside the door. Yeah, it can be useful. Some people say just stick out a fake dog bowl too if you don't have a dog. We'll never know whether that kept people from attacking you, entering the house, because if they don't do it, it's a negative. We can't prove that they were going to do it, However, it doesn't hurt to have things around that make that possible serial killer think that this is not a good place to come in, because there are big dogs. There are people with guns there. So if there's people who are with law enforcement living there, or they're big NRA people. Clearly they have guns everywhere, big pickup trucks in the driveway, really large barking dogs. You're just probably not going to go pick that house. It's not, you see people coming and going, they're watching. And what's coming and going isn't one cute little 22-year-old girl. But then at the end of the block, guess what there is? There's that house. It's up against a bunch of trees. She's got a cat. And there's only ever one car there. And she always comes home, at 5 o'clock in the evening. And the guy sees her walking into the house, and she's like just a little, young thing. So he says, okay, there's the one I'm going to go after, because she's small. Clearly she lives alone. She's just got a cat. I'm going for it. And then he can go for it in different ways. Knock on the door. She opens up the door. Boom. People say don't open the door to people you don't know. But I'm going to tell you, a good portion of people do it anyway because they can't stand the curiosity of not knowing what's on the other side of the door. Oh, it may be somebody I know. They probably maybe peek through the hole. But not opening the door to strangers is probably a good idea. However, sometimes those guys are wearing a uniform. It could be a UPS thing, or Amazon, or it could be something, electrical company. It could be a police officer's uniform. And then you look through and go, oh, I should open the door. Boom, punch right in the face. And then you go down. And here's another possibility. People don't think of this. A guy comes over to fix your house. Let's say he's got something, he's going to put in cable or whatever. He comes into your house and then he leaves, says bye-bye, and you lock the door behind him. What you don't know is he went into the bathroom and unlocked the window. And then he can come back at night and push the window up and come in unless you check your windows. So you can be targeted because you live alone. I have been very fortunate in my life never to have lived alone. I'm kind of a person who's never been into living alone. I always had renters. I've always had I lived with my husband, my 3 kids, usually 2 or 3 renters, usually from other countries like China, India, came and lived with me. So we had lots of cars and lots of people, and it's just not a very good place to pick. And now I live in an extended family, and we have enough adults here, and it's kind of known, and we got big dogs and stuff. So it's kind of a place people don't want to mess with. So the house can be picked. You can be targeted because you live alone, and that is a huge problem. One other thing I want to bring about houses. Let me answer this. Oh, I know I never allow them to use the bathroom. I do try to have someone home under these circumstances. Yeah, having somebody there at the same time is a good idea. Sometimes being on a telephone is a good idea. But if they need to use the bathroom, they do. But what you can do is when they leave the bathroom, you can then just check to make sure they didn't open the window up if you have that kind of a window that opens up. I was actually doing an investigation once, and I was stuck in a house with this guy. One of these days I'll do a whole story on that one. But he was supposed to be a witness from next door, and he invited me in to talk. So I came in, I was talking to the dude, and then he wanted to show me where he saw this car leave next door where the woman was killed. He took me into the garage to show me where, he said, I would look through these windows. And I looked at the windows in the garage, and I'm like, you can't see. I'm thinking, you can't see through those windows. They were so dirty. There was no way on God's earth this guy could see through those windows. And the other thing I noticed is he had taken me around the house. He kept locking doors behind. As we were walking around the house, I could see him do a lock thing. And so by the time he got to the garage, he had locked the house down. And now we were in a garage, and I couldn't see out the windows. And now I'm thinking, I'm standing here probably with the guy who actually killed the woman next door. And so while he was pointing at the windows trying to show me that, I pulled my phone out and then I was on it saying, yeah, I'm over here at Mr. So-and-so's house. I'm going to be back by the office in probably an hour. Can you meet me there then? And once I said his name, I was at his house. He said, you can go now. And he just walked me to the front door and threw me out. It was very, very frightening. But I do think that saved me. So anyway, okay, talk about having guns. All right. A lot of people are scared of guns. However, I will say that is one thing that can be a deterrent. Now, if you're living alone, one of the things I did, I was under kind of a threat for a while. So what I did was in my bedroom, where there were no children, mind you, and my gun was always either in a safe on me or right next to me at my bed where no one else could access it. In the evening, because of the threat, I had the weapon on the nightstand and I had my door bolted shut, my bedroom door bolted shut. And so if you are under, for some reason, under risk of something, that little piece of crap you got, you want something that stops them, not something they can, just get in there really easy. And a lot of the houses today are built so poorly, you could kick a door in like in 3 seconds. But at least if they have to kick the door in, you do have a chance to grab a gun and aim it at the person. So I'm not suggesting that necessarily. I'm just simply saying that is a methodology. If you're living alone, you don't just want to lock your front door. You want your own bedroom door to have the bolt on it, because that's what keeps the guy from getting into you while you're sleeping. Because you can get through a front door and people may not know you're there. And then by the time you wake up and the guy's standing over you at the bed, it's a little too late to do anything about it because he's already there. So, you got to make sure you have that distance. So if you are going to use a gun, you definitely want to have a lock on the door. So, so let me, do I get a lot of threats? Not anymore, but I have in the early days. Yes. I got threats from some stalkers and also a couple of people I was investigating. So yes, and luckily nothing ever came of it, but that was one reason I did have that methodology for a while. And then I still use that methodology. I might admit if I'm home alone for like everybody went out of town except me, I still use that methodology. I lock my bedroom door, take out the weapon, and put it on the nightstand because that gives me a chance. So that gives me a chance. Okay, Helen, if I had a gun, I would have shot my ex. Shh. I'm kind of glad we don't have guns at home in the U.S. Well, let me tell you, there's an awful lot of women who manage to stab their exes pretty darn well, So that does it. Pat being knowledgeable would be a deterrent or a challenge, maybe. No, serial killers don't like challenges. That's what you see in the stupid movies. That serial killers like to be challenged. They don't like to be challenged. That's the last thing in the world they want. They want to be successful. Just plain out successful. I'm going to put this one up behind me for now. Maybe this one. I like this one. So no, they want to be successful. They get their thrills out of the completion of the crime and not getting caught. So serial killers never want to turn themselves in. They never want to get caught. So I'm going to do some more. I have some movies coming up, which which are so far off the mark as far as how they portray serial killers. So I'm going to do some more of those. But no, they want to win. And that's why they pick where they can win. That's why they win so often, as a matter of fact. If they were picking challenging things, then they would have a maybe 50-50 chance of failing. But they don't want to fail. So they always pick something easy. So they're always going to go after a victim they think they can control. They're going to do it where there's no witnesses. And the only time you usually can catch these guys is very much in the beginning when they don't quite know what they're doing at all. And they often strike close to home or somebody they know because they don't know what they're doing. And then as they get better, they don't get caught for a long time. And then sometimes they get sloppy after they've done it so much, and they get careless and they leave DNA or they get stopped by a cop with a body in the car. But generally speaking, they want to win. So they don't do overly fancy things and they do what works. And so they don't want any challenge from anybody. That's the last thing in the world they want. This is an interesting question. Am I more at risk in an apartment than a home? Well, that all depends on your apartment and your home. First floor apartment is more dangerous than a high up apartment. Second floor apartment, sometimes, when they've got they've got ways to get into them. There are some serial killers who've managed to climb up and get into the second floor apartment. Making sure that you have a reasonable, system on your door, that you bolt it shut. I believe in bolts. I mean, my grandmother, she lived in Manhattan, and I still remember from my childhood. Oh my gosh, it was we would knock on her door, and then you'd hear a lot of noise, like, because what she was doing was she was unlocking things all the way down, and then she had this big, huge, I don't know even what you call that, big, huge rod bolt thing, and then she pulled that away from the door. I mean, and this was quite a long time ago. So, and I'm thinking this was probably in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. I remember that. So things weren't always safe in New York back then either. And she had a very strong lock system. So the most important things, as far as living in an apartment, would be make sure you're locked up properly at night so people cannot get in. Make sure nobody is coming up behind you when you're going into your apartment. That's when they push their way in behind you. Don't open the door to anybody you don't know. And it's if you're going to have, service people come in the house, I mean, you can always let somebody know that, they're coming in, especially if they're at the door. You go, yes, John is here from the service. He's here. And then they know, oh, okay, somebody knows I'm here. You can do that. I mean, most of the time we're not going to be a victim, but it's that problem is, you don't want to be so over vigilant that you're paranoid and you have no life because you're scared of everybody. It's like these women I see clutching their purses like this when they go down the street. They're clutching onto their purses, and I think, oh my God, do you spend every day of your life clutching your purse like that? Good Lord, that's a pain in the butt. I mean, think about it. If somebody grabbed your purse once in 30 years, would it be easier just to let that one time happen than have to clutch your purse to your body every single time you walked out of your house? And sometimes you get hurt doing that too, because you clutch like the strap and then they pull it and then they drag you on the ground. I mean, is it worth it? So to me, probably not, to be too paranoid where you can't have an, okay, this is overdone, by the way. The elevator thing, don't hesitate not to ride an elevator with a man if you can. I don't remember the last time I heard of anybody being attacked on the elevator. I mean, it's very, very rare. You know why it's very rare? Because the elevator stops and then the doors open up and then there's other people getting on. I mean, I wouldn't want to attack somebody in an elevator because I might get caught. I mean, it's just and it's also a shabby place to try to do anything. It's claustrophobic and smooth. Then you try to, I've never really worried about that because I just don't think that's all that risky. As far as also about the home thing, the apartment or home, again, living alone. This country has a problem, the United States anyway. I don't know what happens elsewhere in the world. I know, for example, I spent a lot of time in India. Most Indians don't live alone. They got all the families there and the servants. So actually, you're probably more danger maybe from a servant than you would be from anybody else. But, there's a lot of people there. So serial killers walking in off the street, choosing you is probably not going to happen. So it's just because you have a lot of people there. And we've given up on extended families in the United States, at least. So people always want their place to live alone. A lot of times they don't even want a roommate. I don't want a roommate. Don't want to have to deal with the other person. So I've always believed in living with people. I like people around me. I think it's a safe way to live. And it adds to your income, and it also keeps gets other people just involved in your life. I like that way of living. But a lot of people don't want to do that. So the more isolated your house is, the more danger you're in. As far as in one of these neighborhoods where your house is, it's not so far off the beaten track that nobody will ever find it, where you can have big, huge, dogs running around outside. You're actually in some sort of a neighborhood, but your house has got a little bit of a space, or it's got trees around it or something, and then nobody will see what's happening. So, that's where you can run into some kinds of trouble. And also, I also wanted to point out about serial killers in general. The FBI has, I've always thought, had a very poor description of serial killers. Serial killers and serial rapists are people who don't do things just once, ever. So if you got a guy who rapes a woman, and I'm not talking about the quote date rape thing, I'm talking about a guy jumps out of the bushes and rapes you, or violent rape by a stranger. When he does that once, he'll do it twice, 3 times, 4 times. It's always going to be, he's always going to be a serial. There's never, people don't just rape just one time in their life and say, well, that was interesting, I'm not going to do that again, unless he gets caught. Serial killers are the same way. They like what they do. So when they find a dead woman in the bushes in your neighborhood, she's been raped and killed in the bushes, it's a serial killer, and that means a serial killer is at large in your community. Now, a good portion of time, we don't know about the serial killers in our communities, because unless they kill like every week, and people keep ending up dead constantly, which usually happens in Hollywood, or they're all put under one tree, which actually did happen someplace. Guy kept dumping the bodies in one tree, and so when they finally found like the third or fourth body, they found the tree with the 4 bodies, but they all died at different times. You can't get out of saying that's a serial homicide. And I think that was in Canada. I have to look that one up. It was funny because they kept denying, it's not going to be a serial homicide. They're all under the same tree at different times. Four different guys didn't all pick the same tree to dump their bodies under. It's one guy. So serial killers, They don't kill as often as people think they do. Sometimes they kill and then they don't do it for a year or two. Sometimes they move out of the area to the next county or the next state. So not just because they lost their job or the girlfriend dumped them or whatever happened, they got divorced. So what happens is you just don't know who's out there. The FBI once said there were 35 serial killers at large in the United States at any point in time, and I'm going to say that's way underestimated. I would say in every major city, you've at least got 1 or 2 rolling around, at least. And it's just they don't strike as often as they say they do. And so, and that's why they get away with it, because, they kill one woman and then they try to investigate and they can't find the guy. And he just goes back to his normal life. He goes and gets a new job. He gets a new girlfriend. Things go on. And then a year later, he might have moved out of that county because he lost his place to live. And now he kills in the next county, and they don't connect the crimes. I want to point out one other thing about getting away from them, though. This is very important. So we have this wonderful girl who did manage to get away. When a guy is pulling you into a vehicle, never, ever, ever get into that vehicle. I don't care what you have to do. Don't get into it. I don't care whether you have to lay on the ground. I don't care if you have to bite the guy. I don't care if you have to fight every inch of the way. If he gets you in the vehicle and he puts his foot on the gas, jump him. Grab the wheel out of his hands. Jump on top of him. Bite him. Do anything you can. Crash the car. Whatever. Because once he takes you in that vehicle, your chances of survival are very, very low. Because once he's isolated you and takes you either to another isolated spot to rape and murder you, or to take you to his house and put you in the basement and torture you for God knows how long, you're not going to survive it. People, once they get in those situations, rarely ever escape. Much, and say, not again like Hollywood, where somehow you do some clever plan to get out. No, usually you're just done. So you never, ever want to get in a vehicle, no matter what you have to do to prevent it from happening. And if he's got a gun, it's worth getting shot. More worth getting shot than it is getting in that vehicle, because you'll end up dead anyway, but it would be much better to get shot and get it over with than to be tortured. So the chances also that if you're fighting and he shoots you and you fall to the ground outside and you're bleeding, he will just leave and you may survive it all. You may have maybe you got a shot, it's in a shoulder, or it's, it missed all the main organs and you're bleeding, but you're not dead. And then somebody comes and helps you. And this guy runs away because he doesn't want a bloody person in his car. And so always fight. Interestingly, along with some of those elderly women who fought back and survived, the other ones that sometimes survive are prostitutes, because some of them are kind of tough girls. And so some of them will fight back, and sometimes they have escaped from the predator. But never ever cooperate, and don't ever listen to those stupid stories where somebody says, and then I talked him out of it. I told him I was a Christian, or I told him I was pregnant, or I told him I had a disease, or I told him I was contagious. No, no. If he let you go for any reason, it wasn't because of anything you said. And all the girls that tried that are probably dead. And the one that maybe got away for some reason other than that, maybe a witness was coming up, or he saw police or something, he let the girl go. She tells that story. Don't do that. It's just you can't talk a psychopath into anything. A psychopath doesn't care what you think. A psychopath doesn't believe what you say. Like if you're a young woman and a psychopath has you, to him, you are nothing at all. And so he doesn't care. The one thing he doesn't want is hard work. So fight tooth and nail to never ever just get out of there as much as possible. Any other questions here? Well, that's an interesting point. You always stay at a high level in hotels. Okay, not a bad idea. I've traveled a lot. I've stayed a lot of Airbnbs, and some people don't like them and think they're unsafe. But again, I love Airbnbs. I like meeting the people. So it's tough. It's tough. Okay. Well, what about women serial killers? Okay. Yes, there are women serial killers. Of course, we have Aileen Wuornos, who shot a bunch of the Johns. So if you were a John and you were hooking up with Aileen Wuornos, you were in trouble. Most of the time, that it's pretty rare for prostitutes to be serial killers. They might try to steal your stuff and stab you, but most because they want your stuff. As far as women serial killers operating completely on their own, that's pretty rare. Except they usually kill their own children. Often what's called Munchausen syndrome by proxy. They kill baby after baby after baby for the attention. Unfortunately, the baby can't fight back. And the thing you need there is a husband who's not a dupe, and a medical profession that understands what she's saying is concerning, and relatives who pay attention to the fact that she exhibits psychopathic behaviors, and therefore they should tell somebody where they're questioning that this child died a natural death or a SIDS death. So there's those. And then there were those become nurses, especially in nursing homes on the midnight shift, where you can kill somebody and get a cheap thrill out of killing them, and maybe not much of an investigation because they were so elderly. So that's another place. Again, when you look at the victims of women tend to be children and elderly people, because those don't give them a fight either. So serial killers don't want the fight. Now, the only other women serial killers tend to be, they team up with a dude. And someone like Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka up in Canada, she unfortunately is out, and she shouldn't be. She is a serial killer and has no business being on the street. And it's a long story. And I'm going to do a show on those two, because they were very interesting. Carla Homolka is a psychopath and a half, and she shouldn't, but somehow she managed to pull a deal, and she got out early. I think she even remarried and had children. It's just so sweet. Hopefully we don't fall into the list of criteria. That's the thing. I mean, if you don't, you've got a better chance. If you do, then you have to be more careful, and that's the way it works. What were you saying here? Getting a feeling, yeah. I was just typing what you just said about don't try to talk to a serial killer and think you're going to have some kind of influence on him. He's a psychopath. Serial killers are psychopaths, and psychopaths are manipulative, lying, unempathetic creatures. And if you want, it's like, okay, I'm going to talk a lion out of eating me. Go for it. You try to talk a lion out of eating. Yurts are safe too. Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, Annie and I were in Mongolia together on a wonderful trip, and we stayed in yurts, also known as garrus, and we had 5 of us in each one of these garrus. One entrance, you got the 5 of us. So unless some mass murderer came along, I think we were pretty safe out there in Mongolia. And we had company. See, we had witnesses. So yeah, it's safe. Oh, let's see. My daughter works 2 to 2 a.m. She has to walk to her car at the hospital. I'm going to get her a mini siren or air horn for her. She has mace too. Yeah, the mini siren's really good. And I've worked at hospitals as well, and it is unfortunate. I've worked at hospitals in probably areas of the city that aren't exactly the best areas of the city. And yeah, you do. Sometimes you have to go into parking garages at night, which is creepy, or just walk across a long, dark parking lot at 3 a.m. and it is concerning. And so I do recommend the air siren thing here. Oh yeah, Carla case is interesting. Yes, it is. That's I've got to review everything on that case. I talked a lot about it when it was going on, and now I don't remember all the details. So I am gonna do a show on that because we don't have that many couples, but one of the things that happens with couples, serial killer couples, is that the women often tries to blame it on the guy, and they tend to think, oh yeah, he must have manipulated her, so she must be a totally innocent person. She just was trying to, her man told her to do something. No, Carla Homolka is a psychopath, and so nobody should let her get away with saying that. Is Monster an accurate depiction of Aileen Wuornos? I have a copy of that movie. I did see it many years ago. Just as an interesting note, that movie was sent to me by a stalker. I had a female stalker, and she really liked me, and she would send me presents. She would send me an email, 5 emails a day, and a letter every day, and then she sent presents and chocolates and movies and stuff. But she was a little bit obsessed, so Monster was one of the movies she sent me. This is when I used to live in Minnesota. And so, she sent me that movie. I appreciated getting that movie. I did not send a thank you note, by the way, if you have a stalker, a real stalker, not somebody you just, friends and stuff, nice people. Like most of the people I deal with now are nice people. And this particular person was definitely hit the stalker lineup there. And one thing you don't do if you do have a stalker, by the way, is you don't respond. So even when she sent me the movies and the chocolates and the other things that she sent me and all the letters she sent me, many, many, many letters, I never responded, even to say return to sender. Because if you say return to sender, that's a response. So it's better just to ignore it completely. So anyway, I do have that movie, and I will rewatch that movie because I still own it because I don't remember if it was a good depiction or not. But I'm going to check that out. So, oh my God, a stalker with a monster movie. No, she wasn't an Aileen Wuornos type. She was just one of those. That's an interesting point. I am a therapist and do in-home counseling. So to go to new clients' houses all the time, I should get one too. Well, okay, you got a different problem there. A siren in the house is probably not going to do you a lot of good. This is the same problem realtors have. Because they take some person they do not know and they go to an isolated location with them, which is the house they're for sale. And we've had a lot of real estate agents get murdered by serial killers. Or they're sitting in the house waiting for somebody to come to the house, and then that again, somebody comes, they kill them, and then the next person that comes finds them dead. Going to new clients' houses is a problem. I think, to be realistic, you should let the person know that you say, I do come to houses to do in-home counseling. However, I just want to let you know that when I go to somebody's house to do that, I leave, there is a message left at exactly what time I have arrived at the house so that people know when I'm coming and when I'm leaving the house. I do that for my own safety. There's nothing wrong with telling people you want to stay safe and say, up till now, I've never had a problem, but one of the rules we have for staying safe is to do this, to always make sure that the people that are working with us, shall we say. You always want to pretend there's somebody working with you, even if they're not. Because if people think you're operating on your own completely, that's why when I was at that guy's house, I called the office and said, hey, I'm here at Mr. So-and-so's house. Actually, the phone was not working, by the way. I couldn't dial it quick enough. So I couldn't dial it at all, but he just thought he thought I hit a speed dial, which I didn't, because I don't even know if I had speed dial. Whatever, he had his face away, but I just started talking so that when he turned around, he saw me on the phone. So you want to let that person know that they are logged in, that and that when you arrive at the house, you give a note that you have arrived at the house, not that you have an appointment with them, because then they'll say something like, oh, she never showed up when you did show up, right? So you want to let them know that you do some kind of text. I have arrived at the particular location. so that people know you're at the house. Then if you disappear, that would be questionable. You got to do something to let them know. Tell them my office knows where I am, even if they don't. Right? Because you have to make sure that they think it's victimizing you is not a good idea. As I say, a serial killer wants to get away with a crime. They don't want to get caught. Don't ever let anybody tell you they want to be caught. They never want to be caught. So you want to make it so that they feel that if they're going to do something, no one's ever going to come and knock on their door and ask them about that. Let's see. That's very nice. You're going to pick my brain a lot. It's fairly pickable. Let's see if I have any other questions that I have had back here that I missed. Oh, that's very nice, Veronica. They'll have a realistic approach to everything you talk about. It's the reason I look at all you write and film. Thank you very much, Veronica. I try to stay very realistic because I think a lot of times when people talk about these kind of things, they either are too fantastical about it, so it's not really correct, or they're so serious about the way they talk that it just sounds very academic, and people don't listen to it. So what I like to point out is that this is just real life. This real life, we all live this kind of real life. There's things that we need to know are not going to happen. Like, for example, you don't need to look underneath your car for a serial killer. There was a whole thing where the guy's underneath your car. Look, really? Do you honestly think a serial killer wants to lay under a car for God knows how long? Because he could be there for hours under that car and wait for somebody to come, and they might not even know who it is. And then the feet come, and he's going to reach out and try to grab those feet, not knowing if anybody else is in the parking lot, watching him do it. No, nobody's going to do that. I don't hear of anybody doing that kind of crazy thing. Pulling up next to you in a car and grabbing you, yes. Theoretically, it might hide behind a car, but we just should, not go crazy about things that aren't going to happen, but then ignore things that are going to happen. And that's unfortunately, a lot of people sometimes, the things that they shouldn't do, like go on Tinder, don't do that. Well, preventative measures prevail. Let's look at this one. The running away screaming, a stranger would probably be a better idea than trying to take on an attacker. Well, you never want to take on an attacker because you're probably going to lose. Running and screaming is always the best thing. And always go toward a light. I mean, whatever you got, go toward the light, because that's your best chance of having the area illuminated enough where people can see that you're in trouble, that they can see an attacker, that an attacker doesn't want to go because he can be seen. Nothing was more stupid. If you have a way to go for the light, you run into the dark area, then he's going to definitely get you. Just be aware that, don't think you can run. I mean, women take these classes, they always have these tennis shoes on, but most people don't, they're not necessarily with tennis shoes. Like in the summer, I wear flip-flops. Can't run in flip-flops. I guarantee you can't do it. I'd have to stop, take my flip-flops off or kick them off and then run. By that time, he's got me. A lot of young ladies love heels. Heels are impossible to run in. So, unless you're in tennis shoes and really can get a good start, you don't want to depend on that at all. Oh, Mary Rose says, many TV dramas are misleading now. They show tiny female agents, 90 pounds, beating multiple men twice their size. That stuff is all so ridiculous. No, it's unrealistic. It's just unrealistic. And, and that makes people, as I say, it's getting into more and more empowerment for women. So you have more and more shows where women somehow are able to survive male attackers. And in reality, that just ain't happening. I always walk with my keys between my fingers in case I get a jab or swipe in. Also not classified as a weapon. Yeah, not very useful either. I'm telling you, it's one of those things. It's theoretically better than nothing, but yeah, that's still not much of a weapon. Still not much of a weapon. Oh, before I go, I do also want to remind everybody, because I always forget, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and please like this video and hit the bell so you can get aware of what's coming up in the future. I'm trying very hard to figure out a way to keep going on this show without doing certain types of things I don't want to do. The more subscribers I get, and if I monetize by YouTube, hopefully that might be enough to keep me going here. And so But I might have to reach out in other ways. I'm considering doing a Patreon account at some point where people can support the channel, but some things I'm not comfortable doing, and I only want to do shows that are beneficial to you and not do a bunch of types of shows which I feel are just trying to sensationalize things and to get your money, So I'm not going to be doing any of that. So please do subscribe, and please share with your friends the channel so that other people can come and they can see what I've got to offer here, and hopefully it'll be beneficial. That's my whole point to doing this. Is I don't do regular television any longer, and now I have more of a chance to actually speak up a little bit more. Oh, and as far as his books go, I just want to point this out. So Killing for Sport, that one's available, and that's all about serial killers, what serial killers are really like. That is available on Amazon. This one, oh my God, I love this book, and unfortunately my publisher wasn't too useful. And so this book is not available on Kindle. I have no idea why. It's available only rarely by paperback. Right now, I think it's $72. Nobody's going to pay that. I just saw it out of Australia for $23. Woohoo! That included shipping. And then there were like 3 of them, and then the next minute they were gone. It was back to 72. So I don't know what's up with that. If you want a paper copy right now, I strongly suggest going on eBay and getting yourself a used copy. Or Amazon sometimes has used copies through bookstores. And I think it's a great book, especially for, if any of you do have daughters or grandkids. Really good book for you to have and for the parents of your grandkids to have. But unfortunately, you can also get that one. There's an also audio version you can get of How to Save Your Daughter's Life. And there's some woman, not me. I don't know why they didn't ask me, doing the speaking version of it. And I'm not too fond of her voice. She's very sweet and just talks like this the whole time. But it's the one available copy at the moment. That's affordable. It's like it's $8 or something. So I do recommend to learn more about that. Do check out those 2 books. And I will be seeing you next Sunday. I think I'll probably be doing another serial kill, some other crime. I've had so many requests for so many different criminals and their cases, and so I'm not quite sure what I am going to do yet. And I don't know who this is. I have no idea who those people are. I'll have to check them out. I have no clue. But thank you very much, Christine. You're so awesome. I appreciate those guys' comments. And aren't that nice? Your favorite channel on YouTube. That's awesome. I'm doing my best. I say it's a new methodology for me, but I really like it because I like live the best because you're all here, and I like to know people are here and we're communicating as opposed to me just talking into a camera and then posting it. So this is my preferred method. So I'm going to keep on with the lives on Sunday. And I'll probably add other things in, like the movie reviews and my criminal profiling school information. I will start my criminal profiling school, and those will be short videos for people who want to learn about profiling and crime scene analysis. So I'll be doing that. So, say what? Sorry, I got to look at this one here. Do you know of the retired extras from the channel Profiling Evil? Which ones are we talking about? I sometimes I agree with what they say, and sometimes I do not agree with what they say. Other experts, the other experts are some are FBI retired people, some are psychologists. The problem I have with a lot of experts is it's the desire to milk the excitement, because that's what the producer of the show wants. So you have to present things which I think are not necessarily educational, but are more sensational, kind of murdertainment. And I'm not fond of murdertainment. So that's just me. A lot of people like to listen to true crime channels and go, "Oh, look what this person did. Oh my God, they're so creepy." I'm not into that unless it serves a purpose. If I can teach something from that, if you can learn something from that, then I think it's beneficial. I do want people to understand psychopathy. I do want people to understand criminality. I do want people to understand profiling and profilers. And I do want people to understand how crime scene analysis is done, how cases should be looked at and analyzed, as opposed to sometimes what we see in Hollywood where people go, oh, that's how criminal profilers work. And you're like, no, they don't actually work that way at all. But, it's Hollywood, and lots of programs are successful because it's murdertainment in a sense. And where people are fascinated by that. So, but that's not what I do. So you won't get that kind of thing here. But I will do cases where I feel there's very interesting points to make about the investigation, about the behaviors, things that are, like Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. There's so much interesting about their particular behaviors and how everything was investigated. Definitely worth looking at. That's why I did Son of Sam, because there was a lot to talk about there. I mean, there's reasons I'll talk about cases. So if it's just for me to talk about how creepy the dude is, I won't do it. But if you've got a case that really has a meaning and a point, then I will do that. So, but who those other experts are, I'm not sure who they are. So, they're not about sensationalism. Profiling evil. I'm not sure what I don't know what the show's about. So I'll have to look up Profiling Evil and see what they're talking. Is that the one with the scale of evil by any chance? Can I be real? Is that what it is? The scale of evil? Because I know somebody did a whole scale. I will have to check it out. Darlie Rudy. Okay. I don't know who they are. I will check out what that is all about. I'm not sure. And some people, sometimes they are fact driven, and sometimes I find that the facts that are presented are more about. Let me put it this way. I have to try to put it in the correct way. Sometimes shows are done and they do tell all the facts of the cases, but there's no point in telling the facts of the cases except for people to be excited about the facts of the cases. If I'm going to tell the facts of a case, there has to be a reason for me to do it. That's it. Otherwise, the case to me is over. And that's why, like I did the one recent one on Chris's last name. I forgot his name. Oh my God. Okay, somebody give me Chris's last name. Come on now. I just did a show. Chris, what's Chris's last name? Killed the 3 kids. Killed his 2 kids and his wife. I've just blanked on Chris's last name. Anyway, I did that show for a particular reason. One is to say that, he was a 100% psychopath, and do not mistake him for anything but a psychopath, that no one else was to blame. Thank you. Geez, Chris Watts. Thank you, Kat. And thank you, Helen. And thank you, Audra. I just blanked. Chris Watts. See what happens when you don't tape your shows? You can't get out of the corner that you put yourself in. Chris Watts. Unfortunately, the Chris Watts show. Chris Watts' case was very blatant. Chris Watts can kill his family. He confessed to killing his family, and he was put away. Boom, done. But there has been grifters around making money off of YouTube, just going on and on about how the girlfriend was involved and she was involved in the murder, or she drove him to it, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to take that whole concept down, because this is an important issue we're running into in today's world, that there are a lot of grifters out there who are making a huge amount of money off of true crime. And that includes the networks, by the way. Like Netflix often makes stuff which is completely erroneous and completely manipulated to make a huge amount of money, millions of crime. And there's no validity to what they're saying, or it's not even, it's actually unethical. And so this whole thing about Chris Watts was so unethical that I wanted to speak up to say, hey, he did what he did. He was guilty as all get out. I explained how he was guilty. I explained that he is a psychopath. He made the decision entirely on his own. His wife or the girlfriend who thought he was leaving his wife were not an influence on his decision. Okay? It was not an influence. He is a psychopath who manipulates, lies, and does all these things all on his own little self. And blaming anybody else there's no business doing so. So I did one show on Chris Watts. You won't see me do 10 shows on Chris Watts because there's no point in it. And so I'm not going to sit here and just draw people in so we can talk about this forever. It has to be a good reason. Good to get to Helen's question. Will you do a show on Darlie Routier, please, Pat? Yes, I will do a show on Darlie Routier. And I'll give you a preview as to why I'll do a show on Darlie Routier. Wait, is it Routier or Routier? I don't know. I pronounce it French style, so I haven't heard her name pronounced in years, so it might be Routier in this country, but I call her Routier. I don't know. So there is a big free Darlie thing. It's been going on forever and ever and ever. And this happens a lot of times when you have psychopaths who commit crimes. They're in prison. They're in prison, and then they start finding God, finding Jesus. And then they convince all these people that they're really innocent. And then they get this whole fan club. And she's got a huge fan club. And there is that becomes problematic. So yes, I will do a show on that because I think it's a fascinating crime. First of all, I can do a crime analysis on there, or I can prove what happened, or support. I'm going to say prove. I can support what happened, and therefore, so I will do that. I will do that. And I don't know the Susie Lampluck. I don't know that one. I'll have to check that. I don't know who that is. And I don't know the Interview Room with Chris McDonough. I don't know. I'll have to check that show out. I don't know what that show is either. Sometimes I agree with the interview ones. Sometimes I think that they create their own psychology of what they think is happening and how they think people are doing things. And then who's the one I just saw here? Oh, I just want to point this out. There is no difference. There you go. Sociopath, psychopath. So no, there's no difference. The difference is only in the minds of people who like to make these incredibly complicated scales, and usually it's psychiatrists. And usually people want to sell books. They're the same thing. And usually what happens is there's a tendency for them to say, oh, a psychopath is more violent and stupider, and a sociopath is not as violent and more brilliant. Or if we throw the violent part out, if they're both violent, sociopaths are clever. They're the ones you see in the Hollywood movies, and psychopaths are just the guys that jump out on the path and hit you over the head. No, there's no difference. The psychopathy is a lack of empathy. That's all it is. It's a lack of empathy. It's a person who has grandiose thinking, a person who manipulates, a person who it's all about him and nobody else. You're either useful or you're in the way. That's a sociopath, psychopath, same exact thing. The only reason they're distinguishing that, I say, is because there's a tendency to think that sociopaths are just more intelligent, shall we say. Well, that intelligence has nothing to do with anything. The difference would simply be that you're a psychopath that does things in a more intelligent way, or because you're smarter. I mean, the more of a dumb crap you are, the more you're just going to do things in a dumb way. So when they, for example, talk about disorganized killers, a lot of times I'll say, oh, those are psychopaths. And, somebody like, so in other words, they don't do fancy crimes. They just want to rape and kill somebody, and they do it in 10 minutes. I just call them fast. That's all. And then you have somebody like Ted Bundy, and he thinks and he plans, and he like puts a cast on his arm, and he comes and says, look, can you help me do something? And then, so he's a sociopath because he's using his smarts. He's just a smarter psychopath. You don't have to give him a different name. He's still a psychopath. We have psychopaths who are in political places. We have psychopaths who are in the pulpit. We have psychopaths who are teachers. We have psychopaths in many, many kinds of places. And they're just psychopaths, and some are smarter and some are not as smart. Some are more educated and some are less educated. That doesn't change their personality issues. It just means some of them have had a better, for example, if you have a psychopath who's raised in a wealthy home and has gotten to go to good schools and has been given a pony, he might have better ways to figure out how to manipulate people than somebody who has had less opportunities. So, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So, I think it's just a little bit too, let's see who this was. Okay. Susanna Lumpau. I can't pronounce her name either. I love things that you read and don't have a clue how they're pronounced. A British estate agent reported missing in Fulham, London, England. She was officially declared dead, presumed murdered in 1994. Not sure. I had not heard of her before. So So that's interesting. So, sometimes one of the things I will say, um, well, nobody is born a psychopath. They are born with a personality, and I believe I believe it's nature and nurture kind of puts together. So, so, oh, that's nice. Just bought Killing for Sport on Audible. Yay! And that is my voice. Killing for Sport. Yeah, I did that one. So that is my voice. So if you don't like my voice, get the other book. If you like my voice, this one. There are. If I do a show, I have to be able to do something. I have to be able to analyze to a point where there's something to analyze. Sometimes there isn't much to analyze, and there's just sometimes there's a whole bunch of erroneous information. It's kind of like what I just did with Jill Dando. Jill Dando has a massive amount of information that 95 to 99% of it's just bunk. There's no evidence of it. It's just fantastical theories and things like that. And I'm not going to waste time with doing all that. So I stick with things that have something, I have evidence I can work with and to make some determinations. So it all depends. That's why I look at cases and can't say, oh, I'll do all these cases, because maybe there's nothing to talk about, So, that's very nice. I should start a Patreon. I'd gladly join. I'm trying to find a way to support the channel. I had considered the super chat issue, but I have issues with super chat. It just makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like the concept that people donate me money and then I go, oh, thank you for giving me $10. You're such a nice person. I'm just like, I think that's a little, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with doing something like that. I don't think people should give me money to get their names up in lights, and I don't think I should interrupt a program to praise people for giving me money. I'd like to praise people for asking intelligent questions and being here. That's okay with me. So I may consider Patreon, but I have to figure out how that would be useful to people along with supporting the channel. So it's going to take me a while to figure any of that out. So, I kind of hope that just the monetizing through YouTube would be sufficient, and then I could just do this and not bother anybody. So that would be my idea, but we'll see if there's another option here. But anyway, so I will look into these different cases. Always feel free to let me say this. If you want me to look at a particular case, please do put that in the comments below, because I have a hard, super chat. Yes, Martin. That's what I thought. Super chat is super cringe. That's what I thought too. I'm like, thank you for wanting to join my Patreon if I ever come up with one. It has to be a useful one. But yeah, I watched that and I'm like, oh, that I so cannot do. Oh, I have not done. What is this? Can you go to the location you think Madeline's remains is likely to be in some stream? No, I think the place I picked out that's most likely for me, I put that in one of my blogs. It's the Monte Jose de Mestre. I think that's how I say it. Monte Jose de Mestre. It's a desolate little area right to the west of Praia de Luz, where you could just drive in off the road, where Jerry's phone pinged in that area. And then you can just drive off the road, and it's completely desolate. There's just bushes and dirt, and there's good nothing there. It's a great place. That's my most likely. If her body's to be found someplace, that would be one of my top choices. But who knows? I wanted to say, it's actually not on Google Maps. By the way, I can't find it on there. It's just really weird. It's a really weird spot. But if you go to my blog, I have to see if I can put it in the comments someplace. But it's Monte Jose de Mestre, just west of Praia de Luz, very close to Praia de Luz, like maybe 15 minutes outside. So what I wanted to say was, no, I haven't done Hindley and Bradley, Hindley and Brady. I have not done them, and that's a good consideration. In the comments below, because I don't have time to put all this, take down all these names right now. In the comments below, please put your requests there, because I do read all the comments, and then because I have time, then I can put them onto my list of things I'm, can do for the future. So, because I know this particular duo here are very well known. I don't remember much about it, but I think they might be an interesting case to do. So anyway, put those down there. And again, please like the like this and subscribe and share with other people so we can keep this going. So, okay, that's it for today. I'm gonna head out. Thank you again for being here. I do love doing live because it's fun to have people here with me. So, bye everybody, and see you next Sunday.